how many of your patients come to you for quote unquote dyslexia, and what is dyslexia?
Okay, well, I'll back that one up and we'll start with what it is.
Yeah.
What dyslexia is that you have somebody who's bright and their reading is a lot harder than it should be based on how bright they are. And they're not blind and they're not deaf. And they went to school in a normal school, and they just had a hard time learning to read, even though they were very smart.
Mm-hmm.
Most kids, they teach themselves how to read. You give them the letters of the alphabet and the sounds. You might give them Dick and Jane, where they start getting a few words that they know, and they figure out the rest. Okay? Through the years, they just figure out kind of how to read. They start reading, and that could be like, 3/4 of your kids are going to do that. Now, that fourth that don't do that, those would be the ones we call dyslexic. So for some reason, they're not learning to read as you'd expect. That you read to them and they understand it easily. They may be great at math, but when it comes to reading, they just really have a hard time. Now, in that group, you have some that don't hear the words, okay? So if I were to say the word, say scat, child says scat. Now I say it again, but don't say k. And he says at, okay? He didn't hear there was a stream of sound. He didn't hear there was an S sound, a C sound, an A sound, a T sound. Instead, he heard bleh. He heard just a stream of sound that all ran together. He couldn't pull it apart and recognize it had parts.
Oh, wow.
So if you had trouble like that, you're going to have a hard time learning with phonics. And that traditionally, when you hear the word dyslexia, that's what people are talking about, that inability to kind of match the symbols on the page with the sounds. So if you're not getting the sounds, so that would be one reason for dyslexia. Other kids, when they read the letters, they just take forever. It wouldn't matter if they're looking letters or numbers or colors. If they have to look at it, remember what to call it, and get it out of their mouth, it takes forever. Okay, so this is another group of kids that would probably be called dyslexic. They have that hard time. They call it automatic naming. They can't look at something and remember what to call it and getting it out. It's kind of like seeing somebody you know and not remembering their name. Okay? It just takes a lot to pull it out. So that group would be kind of dyslexic.
Kind of like they process each word.
Yeah, they're very slow at processing, okay? And a lot of them have both those things going on. They don't hear the sounds, takes forever to get out of their mouth. So those, to me, are kind of your real dyslexics when they have that. Now, you do have people that supposedly see backwards, okay? And they always are calling B's D's and was's for saw, this type of thing.
Right.
Well, when you're little, you have two directions. You have it's either towards me or it's away from me. It's this way or it's that way. Then you get into, and it's a chair. Let's say you see a chair in a room. It doesn't matter where you're looking at that chair. It's always a chair, right? You don't say, oh, that's a different chair. No, it's the same chair. It doesn't matter how you look at the chair. Then you get into school in this two-dimensional world, and now if the chair fits one way, it's a B, well, a B, and the other way, it's a D, okay? Mm-hmm. So you got a line and a circle, and for the little kid, it goes this way. It goes out to the sides. As you get older, you start to say, no, it goes over here, or it goes over there. So you have children that developmentally, they haven't figured out which way's which. They don't recognize that a B and a D are even a different letter. It's a line. It has a little circle on it, and the circle goes outward. And as far as they're concerned, it's the same thing. They don't know which way to go when they read. Instead of always starting here on the left and going to the right, they start on the right and they go to the left. So that would be most traditionally when you hear the word dyslexia, it's like, well, they see backwards.
Right.
Okay. So that's the one that's most common that you hear about. Now, to me, that's a vision problem. Okay. You don't understand where the world is yet. You're lost on where are things. And so that type of thing is going to respond to a therapy where you learn first how to tell which side is which. You'd learn it on yourself. This is my right hand. This is my left foot. And later on, you'd learn it like, well, if I turn that way, I'm turning right. And if I turn this way, I'm turning left. Okay? They'd start to understand that right over here is different than left, which is over that way. And now they're ready to understand a B and a D. Otherwise, these kids, sometimes they spend a whole year on B and D and they get nowhere because they didn't have the lower level skills. It's like everything else. It's like climbing a ladder. If you skip 4 or 5 rungs, it can be hard. Okay.
Right. It's got to be bottom up.
And so that would be dyslexia. And then you have kids that we work with that see the words blur, and we'll get into this, but they see the words blur in and out. They see them run together. They can read the acuity chart. They read one letter at a time, and they read all the little tiny letters across the room. And yet they see the words dancing around on the page. They run around. They run into each other. They won't stand still, this kind of stuff. Well, that could be thought of as dyslexia. If you were a dyslexia specialist, you wouldn't know that was going on. Okay, so when we look into that, now I'd look at that problem being primarily visual as opposed to I can't hear the word scat and realize it's made up of a bunch of sounds. I would think of that one as being more language-based. Okay?
That makes sense.
And then all of us, if we don't know what the words mean, of course, we get confused.
Right, obviously.
Okay, and that's a different thing. The idea in dyslexia, they should know what the words mean. In other words, intelligence and everything and language was all fine. They know what the words mean. They just have all of these decoding problems.
And how many adults or older people do you get with coming into to see you with dyslexia and reading problems?
Our majority is kids. We will get adults typically when they are about to get a promotion and they know now they're going to have to do more reading. Okay. They change jobs and for some reason they're going to need to know more reading. Now, when we talk about vision, I say how important it is. Most people run their life around their vision. Okay. If you have trouble looking at things and so that reading is difficult, you can't comfortably sit there and look at it, so you get away from it, you don't like to read, well, you go into sales. And, it's like I sometimes tell parents, if I work with your child, they can make $60,000 a year as a librarian. And if I don't work with them, they'll make $120,000 in sales. It's like smart kids, smart people, they're going to be successful one way or the other, but it'll be a different way if that looking at the print is difficult. And so they will move their life around their vision. They will develop in a way that fits the vision. If they're smart, they'll figure out a different way around it. They'll become a building contractor. They'll do fine. As a lifestyle, it'll be great for them, but it won't be something that requires a lot of reading. You probably aren't going to want to be a lawyer.
Right.